Hey everyone. So, welcome to the first episode of the channel. I guess it's only fitting that we start with Star Wars. Rise of the Skywalker, not Rise of the Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker is coming out tomorrow. And I wanted to get some predictions out ahead of the premiere so we can get it committed to public record. So, this is my top predictions for Rise of Skywalker.
All right, so prediction number one. Well, my first prediction is that the Force is going to be explained a bit more as we learn more about Ben and Rey's connection. So, based on lore from canon sources over the years, I've decided on how I understand the Force, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be revealed to somewhat work this way. Um, Basically, I think that the Force is basically finite like water. It changes states, dark and light, and is inside everything and alive. We basically know this. But where I'm speculating is that because of its finite nature, it becomes diluted when spread across lots of people using it, and concentrated when only a small few people draw on it. And we sort of know this from canon, that while the Sith used the Force back when there was a lot of them, they weren't particularly powerful because the power was spread thin. And they only really became dangerously powerful when they started following the rule of two and concentrating that power. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Jedi were always sort of a big army and legion in numbers, and they never got particularly powerful individually. And it's because their use of the Force was spread out among so many of them. So this takes us to the sequel trilogy, basically. Here we see Kylo Ren being super powerful right off the top in the first scene. He's holding blaster fire in midair, he's that powerful. And then, on the other hand, we see Rey awaken, and she starts to draw on that same wellspring that is the Force, and it seems to simultaneously feed her and diminish him, right? So that would also explain Rey immediately being as powerful as she is, and a lot of fans have complained about that. Whether or not that's realistic or fair to complain about is another issue. I'm not going to go there, but it really explains, she's untaught but really powerful because there isn't legions of Force users left anymore that are tapping into that power and that she has to share it with, or that Kylo Ren has to share it with for that matter. Alright, so for prediction 2, this one's the more controversial one. Rey's parents matter. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. Kylo was lying to Rey in The Last Jedi, and he was trying to break her spirit and manipulate her. I'm pretty much convinced of it. I'm one of those people that doesn't buy the whole her parents are nobodies. Maybe he knows, or maybe he doesn't know who they are, but whoever they are, they matter. Everything in the trilogy tells us that parents in general matter, and like sort of genetics and lineage and legacy matter. So more specifically though, my prediction is that Ben and Rey are siblings and they're even twins. So this is the story explaining what would have happened if one of the twins had been lost to the dark side, and how both twins learned to connect to the Force, or with the Force, instead of being saved by Obi-Wan and Senator Organa and Yoda, like Luke and Leia had, or were. So this really borrows from Legends, basically, if I'm right. I'm kind of leaning towards this because it has great symmetry. Lucas was really into symmetry, and he didn't really think of stories as retreading or copying old things in his own story. He saw it as repeating themes and symmetry. So doing something like this would really kind of work well with Lucas's original vision for the entire franchise. And it isn't something that we ever got a chance to really explore in the original trilogy. So this gives us a chance to see how things could have been if done differently with Luke and Leia. This is, the story of how it could have been alternatively. Plus, it's a super compelling story to have twin brother and sister face off against each other and the classic opposite sides of the same coin. And this offers one twin options for a redemption arc later, right? So Kylo then gets this opportunity to be redeemed after everything that he's done, and I think there were a lot of subtle clues about this. A lot of people are kind of in denial about this, but I think there were a lot of subtle clues about Rey being a Solo. She speaks Wookiee. Chewie even likes her. Chewie never likes anybody, though. The Falcon was like a second home to her right away. She's replacing Han with the audience. Her feelings that Han was like a father that she never had. You know, on a more superficial level, she has brown eyes like Leia. Ben has hazel eyes like Han. Hollywood likes to cast performers with bright blue and green eyes because they catch the light in cameras really well. So when they do it, it's usually a very intentional choice. It's not something that the audience is really aware of, but it's really it's intentional from a casting choice and from a sort of design aesthetic. You want to subconsciously make connections to those previous characters and previous actors and show that they have a familial bond. So then there's also like the moment she said her name and introduced herself, Han looked at her sideways as if he knew exactly who she was, or at least suspected. But in the moment, he wasn't going to take that particular moment to bring it up and sort of say, hey, oh wait, I might be your dad, or I might know who you are, or anything. He was saving that for later. And then there's his unconditional job offer. Basically, he offers her a job like as if he's trying to keep her close to him. And I mean, this guy Han is a smuggler. He doesn't trust anybody. So why is he just instantly going to offer to keep this girl so close to him? He suspects that he knows her and that he has a connection to her. At least that's how it read to me. And of course, there's the more famous scene with Maz Kanata, and she immediately knows how special Rey is also. Not just that, she's Force sensitive, but that she's an important person. And I think another really good clue was the scene with Leia and Han in the war room. When Leia and Han get to speak about Ben, they don't mention Rey on screen. But later when Finn comes into the war room and introduces himself to Leia asking for help in finding Rey, Leia says she knows about Rey, and she's actually referring to her by name instead of saying something like the girl or using something less personal. So she already knows who Rey is because someone told her and who Rey was, and the odds are that Han, during that that previous scene where they were talking, at least in the tail end of the discussion about Ben, somehow got to talk about Rey, and that's how Leia knows who she is. There's no signs at all that she's Luke's child by comparison, and that's just in my opinion. I don't think there's any signs of that, and I know a lot of people wanted that to be true, especially back when 7 had first come out. But I'm not on that camp. And even if I'm off on any of these clues and they turn out to not have been clues at all, I'm going to argue that, it's very possible that even the characters simply don't know who she is yet, and that's maybe why they're not connecting who she is and putting all the pieces together themselves yet. Because, it's possible that she was sent away as a child the way Luke and Leia were separated as children. And that's why Ben and her don't recognize each other. And that's why nobody's recognizing them for sure as adults, because, they were sent away as young children. So that would really make a lot of sense. And of course, they were sent away to keep them away from the dark side, right? Away from Snoke or whoever was threatening them at the time. And having Ben and Rey be twins also really explains Rey's visions. They might be memories, sure, but they might also be Force visions or some sort of twin connection amplified by the Force, giving them shared memories and shared Force visions. They might even be having each other's visions. And it also explains both Rey and Kylo Ren's otherwise, inexplicable connection and force use inconsistencies, right? When I originally came up with this theory, The Last Jedi hadn't come out yet, and since then it did, and we saw they definitely have a connection that's special and important. So if I'm right, and they are twins, they might even share a single connection to the Force between them both. Initially, Kylo was powerful enough to stop blaster energy and hold it there, but it was downhill from there, and in correlation with Rey's awakening, right? Of course, the more powerful Rey got, the weaker Kylo appears to get, pointing, and that is pointing to this possibility. Um, all of that would also perfectly resolve the infamous old "no, there is another" Yoda line by making Leia, with her children, the one who brings balance to the Force ultimately instead of Luke. Some people really want Rey to be Luke's daughter because they want Luke to have important children too and to be the ultimate hero. But it's more interesting if Leia ultimately ends up being the savior and less expected. Plus, Luke having kids creates problems explaining who the mother is, and if she ends up really being no one, then that means all this build-up and groundwork that they were laying in Seven ends up never getting paid off, and I don't think anybody really wants to see that. It'd be really unsatisfying if that ended up going nowhere. But we'll see. All right, and for the third and final prediction, Kylo and Rey team up against the big bad. This is probably not the most controversial prediction that you've heard, but I'm betting that Snoke or Palpatine or whoever, they're going to team up against them, and Snoke obviously is dead, so whoever the bad guy ends up being, it's gonna be Rey and Kylo teaming up versus them, and I don't think it's going to be a battle between the two of them. Kylo's going to get redeemed, and I feel like that's a no-brainer. Also, The Last Jedi really showed us that when he wouldn't kill his mother, it pretty much set up the stage for him to be redeemed. I mean, if he had killed Leia, he would have been irredeemable for sure at that point. But because he didn't, he's not completely lost. So, and I feel like I'm sort of already vindicated on this one by by the team up that we saw in the throne room of Episode 8, and also there is a short snippet in the trailer for 9, where we see the two of them destroying some sort of Vader statue. So it looks like I'm gonna end up being right about this one also.
Hope you enjoy the film, and I hope you enjoy watching this video. See you soon.